Second of our Technology for the Safe System webinars, organised by RoadSafe to explore how connected technologies can contribute to each of the pillars of the safe system approach to road safety. My name is Nick Reed and I work in transport technology and road safety through my company Reed Mobility. I'm a trustee of RoadSafe and will be the host throughout this series. For those who don't know, RoadSafe is a charitable organisation that brings together government, industry and research organisations to foster collaboration on road safety topics. We're very grateful to Boschs for their support of this webinar series and to Agilysys for their technical and logistical expertise in arranging these sessions. The first webinar looked at the role of connected technologies in helping to achieve safe road infrastructure. In this, our second webinar, we're looking at post-crash care and how technology is transforming our ability to detect, respond to, assess and manage road collisions. We were keen that the post-crash element of the safe system tends to be the last topic addressed in such series, so we wanted to bring it forward and really give it the attention it deserves. Those of you who are following the series will recall that for each webinar, we are visiting a location relevant to the topic. And today, we're very kindly being hosted by Northwest Fire Control in Warrington. Northwest Fire Control is a public sector company set up by the fire services in the Northwest to jointly handle all 999 emergency calls and be responsible for mobilising firefighters and fire engines to incidents in Cumbria, Lancashire, Greater Manchester and Cheshire. This exciting and unique collaboration between the four partner fire and rescue services sees the Northwest gaining maximum benefit from government funding, providing the best possible service to the public and making over £15 million of savings in its initial years of operation. Joining me here and online are 7 fantastic panellists to discuss how connected technologies are helping to improve post-crash care. But before we meet them, we've made a short film this morning to highlight some of the fantastic activities that happen here at Northwest Fire Control.
From the CID
Fire service.
come through their control because they run us direct.
Of course, yeah. What's the address? Do you have a postcode? So when a call comes into the emergency services, it comes via the BT 999 Operator Assistance Centre, where the caller is asked which service they require. In this case, they would ask for the fire service, and that call will be passed by BT through to one of the fire control rooms, and that's where we are today at Warrington at the North West Regional Fire Control. So when that call comes in, the operator will already know what area the call is coming from, because that will be displayed on call line identity. They will answer that call, and straight away the answering of the call will prompt a lookup into what we call an ISEC database, which is an enhanced information service for emergency calls. If the call is coming from a landline, it will give us an address. If it's coming from a mobile phone, it will give us a set of coordinates and present an ellipse on the map that is basically a triangulation of the radio, the mobile phone masts that have been used to originate that call.
Just to be very clear that the call you saw in that video was a dummy call. There was no disruption to any response services in the making of the video. I should also highlight that you have your chance to ask any questions you'd like to raise with the panel through the chat function on Teams and on anyone watching on YouTube through the comments on the YouTube channel. And yeah, once we'll get a chance to ask some of those questions to the panelists later on. So if I can invite the panellists to introduce themselves and say where they're from and just a few words about their role, it'd be great to hear from you. So we're starting in the room. We've got Sarah and Jed from Northwest Fire Control. So Sarah.
Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar. My name is Sarah Wilson. I'm the head of Northwest Fire Control. I've worked in a control room environment now for 31 years and originally started my career in Lancashire's control room prior to the merge to a regional control room. So I've got a lot of experience and yeah, that's me.
Brilliant, Jed.
Hi there, Jed Basson. I've worked in the fire control room now for over 25 years. I've worked at North West Fire Control for 8 years and was here a year earlier helping it with the transition, and prior to that I worked in Greater Manchester Fire Service Control Room.
Brilliant, thank you. And then moving to our online panellists, we'll start with Tony.
Good afternoon, I'm Tony Crook. I'm an area manager with Lancashire Fire and Rescue Service. I'm also National Fire Chiefs Council lead officer for road safety. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. And Karen?
Hello, I'm Karen Smith from BT's Emergency Authority and Government Relationship Manager. I'm responsible for the routing of all the 999 calls and linking in with government and our centres to agree procedures for the connection of all the calls.
Fantastic, thank you, Karen. And Dan, also from BT.
Hi, I'm Dan Gilmore. I'm the BT's 999 mobile product manager, so I'm responsible for anything that comes in via mobile technology into 999, including card activations as well as normal mobile devices.
Thanks, Dan. And lastly, Florian from Boschs. Florian.
Yeah, hello, I'm Florian. A project manager for connected and digital services, and I think especially in this context here for our automatic accident detection and emergency service.
Fantastic, thank you all. So we're going to start, Tony, with you, if I may. Just give us a real overview of the role of the fire sector in its post-crash response.
Yeah, thank you. There's 45 fire and rescue services just in England, and we all train day in, day out to attend road traffic collisions and be effective in our response. Obviously, the information we get is absolutely vital in attending the road traffic collisions, but when we get there, we want to be able to deploy it very effectively and use our equipment to rescue casualties and make the incident safe. When I joined over 30 years, it was very, very sparse, to say the least. We had tanker saws, replicating saw, and we used to use it was just hydraulic equipment. Now is the best kit and the best appliances to attend at scene and actually carry out extrication. But that's not the end of the story, really. To make ourselves really, really effective, we've worked with professional organisations and partners, and one I am going to mention is Professor Tim Nutbeam and the EXIT project, and that's the Extrication in Trauma project. As a fire sector, what we've done historically is use all our very, very good equipment and rescue techniques, and we've really taken appliances, cars, absolutely to bits on the road to get to that casualty, to give them first aid and emergency care. But what Tim and his projects has been doing is just saying, well, hang on a minute, you don't have to do this every time. You don't have to take a roof off. You don't have to use a spine board. Why not encourage the casualty to self-extricate and actually minimise the impact to the casualty? So it's not about C-spine stabilisation. It's about getting the casualty out quickly in the most simple way possible. So we're just thinking about his research and his findings, and that'll inform the future national operational learning and national operation guidance, how fire services respond to road traffic collisions. So we're very effective. We get there very quickly with information from control centres to support us. We access all the mobile data terminal to tell us all the detail and specifications of the vehicles we're dealing with. We're highly trained, but we also want to undertake the most simple procedures to get the best outcomes. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Tony. That's really interesting how kind of trying to balance the speed of extrication and the risk of harm to anyone involved in the collision, but also the risk to those responding to the collision as well. So we've sort of heard about how Tony kind of arriving on the scene starts to deal with the incident, but Sarah, can you tell us about getting the fire crews to an incident, how you manage that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So We saw on the video there a fire call coming in, and the calls get routed through British Telecom, as I said in the video, and you know, Karen and Dan will talk a bit more about that later on. But for us, the call comes in, and straight away we're really heavily reliant on the technology to support that rapid identification of where the caller is, and also where the incident is. So straight away we get call line identity information. We get the enhanced information service, which tells us the address of the caller, or the coordinates of the mobile phone that they're using. And we also have within our mobilising system a gazetteer of addresses. So our operators will input the address. They will obviously question the caller, get as much information from them as they can. As Tony pointed out, that you know most of the information, the best information that we can get, is from the people who are at the scene, and that's our job to extract that. And our operators here are trained to a very high standard to be able to manage that caller, particularly because they may be distressed. They may not be thinking as straight as they normally would do in that situation. And our operators are trained to handle that caller, extract as much information as they think is necessary to support the response and the incident ground. And that information then informs what we send and where we send it to. So we use a lot of technology to support us in that.
Fantastic. And I'm going to turn to you now, Florian, if I may. I think on one hand, it feels like cars and motorbikes, vehicles have essentially stayed the same for the last 100 years. You know, it has an engine, it has steering and brake controls, accelerator, brake, and so on. But under the surface, of course, there's been some incredible developments in the technologies that underpin those vehicles, not least in the having some sort of awareness of how the vehicle has been driven and if they've been involved in a serious collision. So I wondered if you could tell us about Bosch's work in this space and some of the things that we see currently and are coming in the near future.
Sure, yes, absolutely right. I think motorcycles still have two wheels, yeah. But after over the last years, Bosch has introduced quite a lot of technologies, even on the motorcycle segment. What is well known from technology-wise from passenger cars. But it happened a lot since the 90s when we started with ABS, coming to motorcycle stability control, adding some sensors in 2013. And latest innovations introduced to market is first radar-based, so the so-called advanced rider assistance systems. What is the first radar-based system? What also enables us for surround sensing. So we introduced functions like ACC. We have forward collision warning and even blind spot detection. What helps us quite a lot to assist our riders. So introducing this kind of technology makes motorcycle riding even safer, but even more comfortable without reducing the fun. And what is one big important part of motorcycle riding. And these additional technologies and sensors laid also the basis for future development. So, for example, we are using in our ABS system acceleration sensors and even speed information. And both of them are quite important sources, what allowed us to develop an automatic crash detection, what is in worst case something what is necessary. Using also the acceleration sensor, what we have on board, we were able to implement into the sensor by reusing just the same sensor. We were able to implement here the crash detection algorithm. So this is also the way how we develop here, that try to reuse what sources we have on the vehicles, to make motorcycle riding even safer.
Fantastic, Florian. And I mean, motorcycles, in the enjoyment of riding such vehicles, they can be ridden quite in an extreme manner. How do you differentiate between some of that extreme riding and what is a genuine crash?
Yeah. As I said, we use the speed information and the acceleration information what we get, and both of them are quite important information. Starting with the acceleration, it's one thing. We use the information to estimate about what could happen during acceleration in a collision. So it's one of the basic information when we think about any kind of collision, if we are talking about intersections, or even when a motorcycle is at standstill. Imagine you're waiting in front of a traffic light and the car behind you hasn't realized that you're standing there and hits you. So this is where we get very important information about what kind of accident has happened, and even getting insights about the impact, because we are vulnerable road users with the motorcycle riders, and this is a very important information to get information about a certain risk of injuries, for example. Beside that, we also have the special situation, I think, for motorcycle riders that we see also on the other hand, single accidents. So speed is the other information what is very important. When we have, for example, low-siders, that someone is leaving the road or on a slippery road and it's just sliding from the road, and speed is one very important indication. What gives us the insights about certain risks and the risk of how this accident could finally end up. And this information will be collected, combining both, let's say, sensor information, and gives us the possibility to distinguish between severe accidents or even lighter accidents. And this is one of the information what we also transfer later on during the process. Nevertheless, we spend a lot of effort to keep the freedom of riding. As you said, we have, you can use the motorcycle in lots of different conditions, maybe on gravel roads, but also in extreme situation, because it's possible with motorcycles. And we spend our experience by developing all the other systems to see what is possible with motorcycles. And on the other side, performing real crash tests allows us finally to have the right application for the system to distinguish exactly between those things, keeping the fun, but also robust and secure on the detection side, that exactly this is also still possible for our customers at the end, or the end users. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Florian. And if the vehicles are able to make this kind of discrimination, the motorcycle is able to make this detection, that information still needs to be communicated. So, Karen, it's one thing to know that the incident has taken place, but it's obviously incredibly helpful to the emergency services if they have more information about the incident when they're arriving at the scene. So how are communication technologies transforming this particular capability?
Yes. So when we have this information, let's say, available on the vehicle, we use different ways, independent if we have a direct a cellular connection on the vehicle, or even having a smartphone in between. We prepare also in our system the so-called minimum set of data containing all necessary information, like the GPS position, one of the most important information. Also the possibility then that we can exactly give this information, like we expected a light accident or even a severe accident. And last but not least, our system also allows the possibility for motorcycle riders to give additional information about their, let's say, health condition, if they need special treatments because of some diseases or other things. This is possible to be, let's say, registered in our system. And since we don't have a standard in place like we have it in passenger cars with pan-European eco standard, we are going back to our long time experience in being a third-party service provider for emergency services, and this information will be transferred to our service center and then directly linked to public answering points, in the close location to the accident. And this information will be then also later transferred that we can let's say, best prepared by the information what we can transfer, let's say, to the emergency providers.
Very nice. And Karen, I think there's probably a lot of echoes of how BT helps to support incident response there. Can you tell us about some of the things BT do in supporting incident response, thinking particularly about e-call and in future B-call and D-call as well, all these interesting sources of information that can help improve the response to an incident?
Certainly, we have the telematics and e-call that come direct into BT, or as was just mentioned, where there's third-party call centres that come in. So whether a person can make a manual activation, or whether we get an automatic activation either through a vehicle where it's maybe set its airbags off, or there's even an app that has been accredited for 999 use where it's a motorcycle and it can detect if a rider has come off the bike, so we can get the automatic activation there and the information of where the rider actually is. But absolutely, we get the information through, as just mentioned, the minimum set of data, the direction of travel as well as the location, which will help on motorways, the make and model of the car with the license number or the VIN number, whether it's been automatic or manual, and we put all of that information straight into our ISEC database, as Sarah mentioned earlier on. So when we connect the call through to the emergency service, where we've had the routing information provided with that activation, so we know which emergency service to put it through to. As soon as we connect the call, they can pull that information straight through and instantly have the information on their CAD system. And as was linked to there, with future developments, if there is further data, we're further developing our ISEC system so that potentially we can put more information on there if the emergency services would find that useful in the future going forward as well. So certainly it's something that is, constantly looked at and onward developed in the future too.
Brilliant, thank you, Karen. It's just so interesting to hear about the technology within the vehicle, but another source of technology is the devices that people carry, the smartphones that they're using potentially to call the emergency services. So Jen, I wonder to turn to you about the 999i service and how that supports what the kind of incident response and information you can give to the crews arriving at a scene.
Yes, 999i is a commercial package that we partner up with a company, and the product allows us to access the video footage or camera phone of a smartphone. It's done through the 999 system. We'll just send a text message, an SMS message to the caller, and then it allows us to access their camera footage. They can then point the camera at incidents, whether it be a road traffic collision or a fire, and then we can gain additional information. We'll already have asked the questions: where's the call, what's going on there, and sent the fire engines out already, but then this gives us further situational awareness. It also allows us to locate the caller further as well. It gives us a GPS location and also have instant messaging with them as well if they're having difficulty with the language.
And when someone is providing that, is using their smartphone in that way, how do you make sure that they don't themselves end up in more danger?
As part of our call handling process is just making sure that they are safe to take footage of the actual incident, not putting themselves in danger, and we also don't want them to video anything that's a bit too gruesome either, so just making sure we have certain criteria that we don't want them to film as well.
Fantastic. Tony, I was going to turn to you if I may. Thankfully, and I'm sure many of the audience watching today have never been involved in a serious traffic incident, never mind being involved in the response to one. To help kind of set the scene, can you take us through that process? I mean, what information are you being given? Who leads the response? And what do you do on arrival? And how is technology helping support this process?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, we get a call in from the control centre, giving us as much information as we can. Also, we're updated en route. We use our NDT or mobile data terminal to access information about route location, about the site-specific risk information to the area we're attending, and all that's on maps and data. We also can bring up, which is very, very useful now, the crash data. So we can bring up manufacturing details about specific vehicles and appliances that basically tells you the hotspots, so in other words, the risk areas, especially to avoid, the cutting points, the isolation points. So we've got all this information coming at us, along with some services that operate the 999i for that hands-on, or the ground view before you arrive at scene. You're also getting repeat calls passed through from fire control on your response route. When you arrive at scene, you're pretty well armed already to start putting into place your pre-trained actions and also your dynamic risk assessment. So first of all, scene safety. So you've got to park in an appropriate place first of all for the responder's safety, but also for the safety of the scene. We usually fend off the vehicles to protect the vehicles that have been involved in the crash. We get out the safe side of the carriageway, and then the crews would be starting to set up an equipment pool while the officer in charge does a dynamic risk assessment and assesses the hazards. And the hazards can be absolutely varied, from just a smoking car and it's been a 2-car shunt to a multi-vehicle pile-up that's containing hazardous materials. So then it'll need a bigger response from our hazardous protection units. We usually deploy a predetermined attendance to these incidents, so you get the correct weight and speed of response. So for a straightforward 2-car shunt where persons are trapped, you'd most likely get 2 fire engines, a flexi-duty officer, and then you could get some specialist appliances if more heavy-duty cutting equipment is required. On scene itself, after you've done a dynamic risk assessment, then you put your plan of action into place. And first and foremost, that's liaising with co-responders, making sure that the casualty care is being given by the correct people, that the actually lanes are being managed for the safety of the responders as well as their casualty. And then we put a plan to extricate that person out of the vehicle. And as mentioned before, we try to keep that as simple as possible, but we also understand that some extrications are very involved and will involve very timely extrication that does take some time. We do try to hold to the old rules of the platinum 10-minute. So the platinum 10-minute, you should have hands on and be giving some sort of medical assistance, and then the golden hour, where you'd have the casualties extracted and actually delivered to a medical centre to actually undertake further medical treatments if required. I'll pause there just in case you want to ask any more questions. Thank you.
The other thing that occurred to me, Tony, as you were describing all that, is particularly for a motorway incident, there'll often be a lot of pressure to get the road open as well, and just how do you balance the demands of getting the road open versus the care for those involved in the incident and the safety of the crews?
Yeah, it's a real valid question. That there are incidents where there's a major crash or spillage on the motorway where they just take a very straightforward HGV fire that's burning very well. It's well alight. We've got to put that vehicle out, and then the vehicle's got to be really, if it's not on the hard shoulder already, then it's got to be extricated and removed from the motorway, and that can take some time. So I work with partner agencies, National Highways and the police especially, to put our plans in place. We work under the operates of clear, which basically means we turn up, we assess it, we do what we have to do, but then we actually clear the motorway as quickly as possible, because we're very, very mindful that a minute delay can cause a minute backup in carriageway traffic. So you can have an accident that shuts the motorway just for a short period of time, and it has a huge impact, not just on the local community, but local businesses, and obviously the commerce and the monetary impact. These incidents, we always carry out a debrief. Any large incidents can also involve the regions, and also the government level can get involved when it's absolutely impacted. I know there was an incident in Birmingham not that long ago where the motorway shut, and it had such a devastating impact on really the mobility of commerce up and down the motorway that it was a very serious debrief and learning outcomes. But what we try to do is obviously first and foremost protect the people, treat the casualties, make the area safe, but then work with our partner agencies to clear that motorway as quickly as possible. Even if it's partial opening of the motorway, or if it's rerouting some of the carriageway onto the other side of the motorway, so people still have access on the motorway. So again, I'll pause there in case there's any further questions.
I wanted to give Dan an opportunity at this point, because I think one of the important factors you've mentioned there, in a serious incident, lots of people involved. I wondered about how you keep making sure that the communications are prioritised and keep those communication channels open and suitably prioritised to make sure the response can be coordinated appropriately. So yeah, Dan, I wondered if you could comment on that.
Any call which is made, either manually or automatically, and goes through either 999 or 112, has priority on our network. So no matter what kind of pressure, a lot of the time when you see road traffic accidents and things which are very visible, it creates a lot of 999 calls, not just the ones which have been activated, possibly through the vehicle or by the occupants of the vehicle. But all of that is protected on the network, so it comes through to us regardless of what else is happening, in the country.
Fantastic. And Jed, I wondered, there's some interesting ways in which technology can support accessibility of the emergency services. So thinking about people who are deaf, people who use sign language, and the opportunity to use video calls to communicate through that route. So maybe could you tell us something about that, please?
Yes, coming up this month, mid-June, this new technology is going to be available to 999 control rooms, where anybody who uses British Sign Language can video conference an interpreter who can then relay that message through to a control room via the BT 999 system. And we will then question the interpreter, but as though we're speaking to the person who's using British Sign Language. And it's just another way we can communicate with different parts of the community.
Fantastic, Joe. Thank you. I wondered, Sarah, the territories covered by North West Fire Control are very different. You've got Greater Manchester, very urban environment. You've also got Cumbria, the Lake District, very rural environment. So how do you get the response right, depending on which type of environment you're called to respond to?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There's a huge difference in the geography and the demographics and the risk profiles of each of the services that we mobilise for. And again, it's that real heavy reliance on technology to be able to do some of those calculations for us. So we have lots of functionality within the mobilising system that enables us to put in things like bespoke road speeds, so we can set the road speeds for each area. So, for example, an area like Manchester, particularly around the centre of Manchester where there's heavy congestion, you may not be able to travel at the regular road speed or the set for that type of road. The same with Cumbria. The geography and the elevation of some of the roads in Cumbria mean that fire engines just cannot travel on them at the same speeds. And and because of that, that can impact the speed at which they respond to an incident, which means that another fire engine may be able to get there quicker, even though it isn't necessarily closer. So we use the technology as best that we can. We have automatic vehicle locating systems on all of the fire engines and in all of the officers' radios. So straight away, the mobilising system knows where everybody is. That's why it's so important for us to get the exact location of the incident right, because once we've got that right, the system then can calculate which is the quickest response based on where the fire engines are located at that particular point in time. So we use that a lot, and I think one of the examples that I know you and I were talking about earlier was in Cumbria, where we'd experienced severe flooding and there was a lot of bridges that had been taken out of commission, and we're able to put those in as roadblocks within the mobilising system, and it will then route around them, which means that we may get quite a different attendance to the one that we would normally get if that bridge was open and working. So we do place a lot of reliance on the system to do that, but also on our colleagues in our operational support department, because they have to put all of that data in, and our system suppliers work very hard to put all of that data in. So we're very reliant on our fire service partners to get that data to us and get that data right, and then we need to get that into our system and then maintain it. So it's a pretty big job to keep it all going.
And there's obviously been some efficiencies and benefits of consolidating the 4 regions into the one control centre. How much further can that go? Could you have a national control centre, or I can imagine there's lots of value in having the local knowledge of the region that might be difficult if you had a kind of a national system.
Yeah, and I mean, that used to be one of the main arguments against regionalising the facilities was around the loss of that local knowledge. But to be perfectly honest, I certainly don't know all of the locations in the county that I live in, and that doesn't prevent us now from being able to mobilise to those places. The technology that we've got available to us is quite different to what it was 25, 30 years ago when I joined. And Karen mentioned before about the ISEC information. We've got interactive mapping products now that work with the mobilising system. So we can actually use the maps to look at landmarks and locate callers, even if they don't know where they are, even if they don't know the names of the roads that are around them, or even if they're not located near a road. So, for example, if they've met with some kind of accident in a very rural area. But we can use landmarks and actually pinpoint the locations of people through that. So I think gone are the days where you need to know that the lie of the land in local areas, because there's so much information out there now that enables you to do that without ever having been there. And like I said before, our operators are trained right from day one to be able to question the callers appropriately to get the information they need in order to be able to identify those locations. So you could operate on a national level, and some of those organisations already do that. But yeah, I'm not sure we want to go there.
No, that's amazing. And I mean, a lot of what you've talked about there, Sarah, is that localisation. And yet I know the emergency services have talked about, have suggested sometimes people use this the what 3 words system that people on the call may have heard about. So maybe you can explain what 3 words and how that helps response to an incident.
Yeah, what 3 words? It's another commercial package that we use. You may have seen this advertised in the media. Lately, it's advertised quite regular, and it actually breaks down the globe into 3 metre square sections, and each is identified by 3 separate words. So if the caller is not sure where they're located, so as Sarah says, they might be in a rural area and they don't know the name of the road or a field that they're in, they can use the what 3 words application, and then they can pass us the 3 words that is identified to them, we can type them in our mobilising system and locate them on our mapping system and in our gazetteer, and then we can send out the nearest fire engines to them.
Fantastic. So we are seeing some questions coming in. Now we've got one from around the eCall service, and it's good to hear the eCall MSD set is placed into ISEC. Interested to see what the fire and rescue services use it for and how it helps plan response, for example, vehicle fuel type. Tony, I wonder, could you pick up on that one?
Yeah, I can pick up on the vehicle fuel type. The eCall obviously is into Northwest Fire Control. They'd relayed the information to us to give us what we're attending, and also the type of vehicle is as we've mentioned before, has moved on a lot. So electric vehicles in particular have been I won't say a thorny issue, because they're really good for the environment, and it's the way forward, but it's been a prickly issue for emergency services to actually respond to effectively, and it's been a learning curve for us. So we work very closely with the information channels that are given us on specification knowledge to inform our rescue techniques. We need to know where the safe cutting and isolation points are, especially to avoid the high power cable sections that are usually in orange cable. But I'll just read you out the 5 steps to isolating a high voltage vehicle, just to show where this has gone. So this is for all crews attending a electrical vehicle. So number 1, turn off vehicle ignition and remove the key 5 meters from the vehicle in case it self-starts again. Disconnect the low voltage battery earth. Number 3, use crash data to locate the high voltage service plug or first responder loop. Number 4, don electrical gloves. So we carry electrical gloves up to 3,300 volts resistance. And then number 5, isolate the high voltage service plug using the one-handed method. So basically, that's putting one hand behind your back with electrical gloves on, just so you take the plug out, so then it doesn't go to earth, the other hand isn't the earth, or you cut the first responder loop. So we've got to do all this, and that's just to isolate an electric vehicle before we even start carrying out extrication techniques. So it's really give us something to think about. And then when you look at the information we get on what type, is it a hybrid vehicle or is it a full EV electric vehicle, and look at the battery, the batteries that are contained within. Usually they are lithium ion batteries, and the real issue with them for us is if they're damaged, they can have what's called thermal runaway, and so basically that means they can self-heat. So even if we turn up with a truck with 1,000 litres of water on, we isolate the vehicle and then we cool the batteries to a point where we think the fire is extinguished. And because of this phenomenon of thermal runaway, the lithium ion batteries will just self-heat, and then they reignite and really reignite, so the whole car is on fire again. So we've learned from that over the last few years, and fire and rescue services have adopted the way they suppress fire. So here in Lancashire, like many other fire and rescue services, we've brought in water bowsers. So basically that's a water tank with a 9,000 litre capacity of water on board, where we would deploy along with the predetermined attendants to a major collision on a motorway, but especially if it's involving an electrical vehicle. So we've got 9,000 litres of water to suppress the vehicle fire and ensure the thermal runaway doesn't kick in and it reignites. But that's not the end of the story there. When we've kind of finished with the vehicle, we do a handover form saying that the vehicle then should be stored remote from buildings and not inside for a period of 24 hours. So the vehicle recoverers have got to take it to, shall we say, a safe place, where if there is a small chance of reignition, then it's not going to cause a safety issue and set fire to anything else. So With electric vehicles, first of all, knowledge of specification, type, as much information you can get for the incident, but then it's adopting your procedures to ensure you can deal with the incident in the best way and make sure it's safe in the long term. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And I often think electric vehicles get something of a bad rap in this kind of situation, because obviously the traditional vehicles are driving around with a tank of flammable liquid as well, so they have their own risks. But another potential powertrain solution that's coming is hydrogen. And I wondered if the fire service has had any thoughts about responding to vehicles with hydrogen tanks.
Yeah, hydrogen tanks. Any mixed vehicle. It can be LPG, hydrogen. It's a flammable gas. First of all, we deploy what we call a hazmat environmental protection officer along with the response, so they can look at not just the risk to the personnel at the scene, but also the environmental issues. We treat gas just the same as any other really risk issue we've got. It's dynamic risk assessment. It's letting the tank vent off, and as you just mentioned, a traditional diesel or fuel fire, petrol fire powered vehicle comes along with its own risk. So we're used to dealing with flammable liquids and flammable gases, and it's make sure all the electric is isolated, make sure that it can vent off if it needs to. If there's runoff, contain that runoff from environmental damage, and we have a host of appliances and specialist equipment can deal with that. But it's treat the casualties as soon as you can, and also suppress the fire. Again.
Thank you, Tony. Karen, I wondered about what does the future hold? What's the next step for eCall and the sorts of information that can be shared with the emergency services to help improve post-crash care?
Well, BT is currently upgrading our platform that we operate the 999 service on. It's a high resilient platform, obviously. With 3 switches, we're going to have 3 nodes. But this is going to enable us to keep up with next generation, whatever that may be, with the new products that come along, but certainly being able to have this extra data coming through. And as I say, we're also upgrading our ISEC to match that new capability. So whatever information we do get, we can put quickly down and ensure that we can provide that straight into the emergency service controls at the time and the point of the call coming through.
Fantastic, thanks, Karen. And I wondered, Florian, in terms of the data we've spoken a lot about the data that is collected and communicated. I wonder, is there a line we have to be careful here about how much we observe drivers, how much the privacy concerns about collecting data about what drivers and vehicles are doing? Is that a factor here?
Yes, it's a huge factor, and I think also one of the factors where we have to be quite careful. Clearly, we have GDPR as our boundaries, and this is why we also take as much as possible care about this. Also, our system stores information like speed and the acceleration. Not really storing it, but let's say assessing the information. And then we just transfer the information what we got from given the direction of the last let's say driving situation and even the assessed situation if we have a severe or an unsevere accident. And then exactly this information what is transferred is also let's say protected and stored on our service quite secure, because we want to ensure that still riders feel comfortable, because tracking is also one of the, let's say, highly discussed topics. We don't want to monitor and to track the riders. We want to give them the possibility when they have the worst case in situation and what they can have as a rider, that they have the service what they need. We don't want to let's say be the black box tracking. So therefore we take highly care about the information what we transfer and how do we store it. And by latest, when it comes to information like health information, we ensure that we have high protection class on this data storage. What is later on transferred only in the worst case situation, where this information needs to be transferred to ambulance and or fire department.
That's very clear. Thank you, Florian. Now, you may recall that when I introduced the session, I said we would be joined by 7 guests, but only 6 introduced themselves. Well, the 7th has joined, Dan Quinn. Very welcome. Dan, would you like to just introduce yourself and say who you are, where you're from?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Dan Quinn. I'm the Deputy Chief Fire Officer of Surrey Fire and Rescue Service. I'm also the National Fire Chiefs Council lead for a transportation road, so that's the road response element. And I'm the Vice Chair of the United Kingdom Rescue Organisation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dan. And a question I had for you. I think it's fairly well known that the Department for Transport is working towards the potential for a road collision investigation branch. And I just wondered if such a thing were to emerge, we'd have no guarantees of the look and feel and shape of that, but if something were to appear, what might that help us achieve in terms of coordinating responses to incidents, providing that post-crash care, understanding how and why crashes happen on our roads?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was part of the original conversations around what the road collision investigation branch could look like, and I've got to be honest, it's a really exciting time. There's a huge amount of crossover in terms of different agencies that are involved already within understanding what causes and particularly root causes, and also what could be done to prevent road traffic collisions moving forward. I think it will be a very welcomed addition, definitely learning lessons from other investigation branches as well, which was part of the shared learning on the workshop that I participated in. And I genuinely think that what they will be able to do is to really explore in greater detail the root causes of accidents that are occurring, and also how individual and collectively partners can influence preventing those incidents from happening in the first place. We are doing a piece of work as part of the National Fire Chiefs Council, which is looking at where our road response occurs. And part of that includes a real good understanding of how transient the risk is in terms of road traffic collisions, and also where you're then trying to target your prevention activity, which is often going to be a great distance from a border of an individual fire and rescue service, for example. And I think the collision investigation branch could actually break down those boundaries and work as a whole country approach, which I think will be really advantageous.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. Very exciting times. There's time for one more question from the audience, and I'm going to pose it to Dan Gilmore, if that's okay. It's a question about the amount and types of information that are available from different vehicle types. So, eCall might be available from new cars from 2018, but what information is available from HGVs and buses, coaches, motorcycles, for instance? Can you tell us something about that?
Well, eCall is more sort of just for your normal cars and transport. I think a lot of public transport use their own systems in order to deliver that information. And that will generally come through possibly apps and things like that, which actually on their phone, which connect into their systems, in their car or in their train or whatever it is. And then they're looking then to deliver that stuff to us in the same sort of way that we do at the moment. But certainly moving forward, as we move into the all IP world, we'll be looking for, more of a SIP style delivery. Which will mean we'll have much more freedom to put different pieces of information, get it from different places, and make it available to the emergency authorities very, very quickly.
Thanks, Dan. And Florian, maybe would you want to comment on that, the sort of coordination of information across different vehicle types?
Yes, we also, as part of the MSD, we let's say also information that what type of vehicle it is, that it's clearly that we are a two-wheeler, to give the information we also learned from our investigation that it's also very important information for the ambulance and rescue centers that they know what kind of vehicle it is. To get the have there also their additional assessment about that if they know it's a motorcycle, then they most of the times know in critical areas that they have to expect a really severe accident because it's well known in the area. When you also come back to when we have a service center what is close to or in a known area. So this kind of information we also transferred, and as part of the MSD, that we are a type of, let's say, the motorcycle as a type of the vehicle, and also giving the information. Not that common at the moment, let's say e-vehicles, but that we are a motorcycle, it's something what we give as additional information.
Brilliant, Florian. Thank you. I hope that's answered the question that we received. Well, I'm sad to say that time has beaten us here. I've really enjoyed the conversation that we've had today. I wish it could continue further. We're tremendously indebted to the panellists who've joined us, given their insights, their information, their experience of post-crash care. I'd like to thank Bosch and Agilysys for their support in delivering this webinar series. And of course, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to listen and participate in this discussion. The next in the series, the third webinar, will be on connected technology and safe vehicles. That's going to be hosted at Thatcham Research in September, where we'll be looking at some of the latest innovations in the automotive sector and how they might contribute to achieving Vision Zero and hopefully reduce the need for the services of the team here at North West Fire Control. And again, I will be joined by another fantastic panel of experts, bringing a range of interesting views to the debate. I hope to see you there, but for now, thanks very much for watching. Stay safe on the roads, and goodbye.